What happens when a billionaire stumbles upon his poor employee feeding disabled people? What will he do when he discovers her selfless acts of kindness? And how will this moment change her life forever? Sit back and watch as we unravel a powerful story of unexpected kindness and a life-changing offer that will leave her in tears. Keep watching to uncover the shocking twist. Cynthia Benjamin was a junior customer service agent at Joseph & Company, a prestigious company in Lagos. Every evening, after a long day of work, she would head to a small market with the little money she had left. She bought food, bread, and whatever she could afford, making sure to give it to the disabled people sitting along the road. Though she didn't have much herself, Cynthia always ensured that others weren't forgotten. She shared whatever she had, believing it would make a difference, even if she received nothing in return. She wasn't looking for gratitude, it was simply her way of doing the right thing. Each day, she would stop at the same spot, offering food with a smile. The people there had become familiar with her quiet generosity, but Cynthia never thought much of it. She was simply doing what felt natural to her. What she didn't know, however, was that someone who would soon change her life, was watching her closely. That evening, as Cynthia walked home, she had no idea that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. Frank Joseph, the no-nonsense CEO of Joseph & Company, was stuck in traffic. The cars barely moved, and his was just one more in the endless line of vehicles. The streets of Lagos were as bustling as ever. As he neared a busy junction, he saw a familiar sight: hawkers selling fruits, the air thick with the scent of street food, and disabled people sitting on the side of the road, hoping for help. But then something caught his attention. A woman in a blue shirt and black skirt was weaving through the crowd. Joseph's eyes narrowed as he tried to place her. She was holding a black nylon bag filled with food packets, carefully distributing them to one person after another, as though she had all the time in the world. Joseph's heart skipped a beat when he realized who it was: Cynthia Benjamin, one of his employees. She wasn't a wealthy philanthropist or a celebrity. She was just an ordinary woman, like so many others, but here she was, giving what little she had to people who could never repay her. Joseph, who had spent his life focused on business, numbers, and profits, couldn't comprehend it. Why would Cynthia, who was struggling to make ends meet herself, give so much of her time and resources to those who could never return the favor? She wasn't rich, yet her heart was bigger than anyone he knew. As his car rolled past, Joseph's mind raced, a mixture of confusion and admiration flooding over him. He had witnessed many charitable acts before, but nothing quite like this. Cynthia's kindness was genuine, raw, and completely without expectation. She wasn't doing this for recognition or reward. She was doing it because she cared. For the first time in years, Joseph felt something stir within him, a deep sense of respect and disbelief. How could someone as poor as Cynthia be so selfless, while those with so much gave so little? His thoughts weighed heavily on him as his car slowly moved through the traffic. This moment, this quiet act of compassion, would stay with him forever. Frank Joseph would never look at the world the same way again. At work, Cynthia Benjamin found it hard to speak up. She was shy, always keeping to herself, and rarely joined in the office conversations. Despite working hard every day, she never felt like she was good enough. She did her job well, but no one seemed to notice. No one praised her, and no one gave her the chance to prove herself. It was always the others, louder, more confident voices, that got all the attention and opportunities. But Cynthia didn't mind much. She just kept her head down and worked. All she wanted was to do her job well and go home to help those in need. She didn't care about office politics or being the best. Her only goal was peace and a chance to make a small difference in the world, even if it went unnoticed. Then, something changed. Frank Joseph, the strict CEO, began paying more attention to her. At first, Cynthia didn't notice. He was always busy, serious, and focused on the company. But now, she could see him glancing her way in the office. It wasn't like him to show interest in someone like her, someone quiet, someone unnoticed. Yet, there he was, watching her every day. He noticed how Cynthia worked hard without complaining. Always focused, always giving her best. It was different from the others. Joseph found himself intrigued by her. He started talking to her more, asking questions about her work. He even watched her during lunch, sitting alone in the corner, quietly eating. As Joseph paid more attention to her, the office started to notice, too. Whispers began to spread. Why was the CEO, known for his toughness and seriousness, paying so much attention to Cynthia? What was so special about her? The gossip grew louder, and soon everyone was wondering why she had caught Joseph's eye. But Cynthia had no idea. She just kept doing her work, unaware that someone so powerful was watching her. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. All she knew was that she had to keep helping others, even if no one saw it. But soon, Joseph's curiosity would lead to something that would change everything for both of them. That evening, a heavy rain had fallen, leaving the streets wet and cold. Joseph, waiting for the rain to stop, looked for Cynthia around the office, hoping to offer her a ride home. He thought she might need it, especially since she likely spent her money on food for the needy. But when he came out of his office, Cynthia was already gone. Feeling sure she would be at her usual spot where she helped the disabled, Joseph decided to drive there, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. The roads were wet, and the city was quieter than usual, but Cynthia couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to offer her a ride home. He drove slowly, eyes scanning the area. As he approached the familiar junction, he saw her. There she was, Cynthia, walking slowly down the road. She held a black nylon bag filled with food packets, distributing them with a calmness and kindness that Joseph couldn't ignore. Without thinking, he slowed his car. He couldn't just drive past her. Rolling down the window, he called out, "Cynthia, do you need a ride home?" Cynthia stopped in her tracks, surprised. She wasn't used to people offering help. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd appreciate that," she said softly, quickly giving out the last pack of food. Joseph unlocked the car, and Cynthia climbed in. The warmth of the car was a welcome relief from the cold. They drove in silence for a moment, the hum of the car filling the space between them. Joseph couldn't help but notice how tired Cynthia looked, how weary her face appeared. Yet, she didn't complain. He looked at her, his mind racing with thoughts. "Could you tell me a little about yourself?" Joseph asked gently. Cynthia glanced out the window before answering. "I'm an only child. My parents retired and moved back to the village. I stay here in the city alone, trying to make a living," she replied quietly. Joseph listened, his heart heavy. Cynthia was alone in the city, working hard every day. Yet, she still found the time to help others, to give to those who had nothing. They continued driving through the streets, the quiet between them filled with unspoken understanding. Joseph drove her to a modest street, where the buildings were old but sturdy. It was the kind of place where people made do with what they had, not asking for more. He stopped in front of a small house. "This is it," Cynthia said, opening the door. "Thank you, sir," she added quietly as she stepped out of the car. Joseph watched her walk toward the house, her steps slow but steady. As she entered the small house, he sat there for a moment, thinking about what he had just seen. Cynthia didn't have much, yet she gave to others. Her quiet kindness had changed something in him. Joseph realized he had been focused on the wrong things: business, money, success. None of that mattered as much as the simple act of caring for others. In that moment, Joseph knew his life was about to change. Joseph had seen something in Cynthia that others hadn't. Her hard work, her quiet dedication, and her kindness were impossible to ignore. But Cynthia didn't yet know her potential. He started giving her tasks much larger than what she had done before. Projects that would usually be given to more experienced employees. But Joseph wasn't worried. He believed in her. At the office, Cynthia started feeling the pressure. The work was hard, and it seemed like every task she completed was followed by another, even bigger challenge. Her colleagues started whispering. "Why is the boss pushing her so hard?" they asked. "She's just a junior employee." They didn't understand why Joseph was so focused on Cynthia. They didn't see what he saw. Cynthia didn't know what Joseph had in mind, but she wasn't about to back down. Nervous but determined, she threw herself into the work. She knew that Joseph believed in her, and that was enough to keep her going. Every late night, every extra hour spent working was her way of proving him right. But Joseph wasn't finished. He had a bigger plan for her, a plan even Cynthia couldn't yet see. The day of the big project presentation arrived, and Cynthia's nerves were at an all-time high. She had worked tirelessly on this, but standing in front of the company's board was unlike anything she had done before. The room was quiet, the air thick with expectation. Cynthia stood at the front, holding her notes, her hands trembling. Frank Joseph sat at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on Cynthia, giving nothing away. The board members stared at her expectantly. "Good morning, everyone," Cynthia began, her voice soft at first, but gaining strength as she continued. "I've completed the analysis on the proposed budget cuts, and I'll walk you through my findings." She explained everything clearly, step by step, guiding the board through her analysis, the numbers, the graphs, and the projections. Despite the nerves still buzzing inside her, she presented with confidence. Joseph watched intently, his gaze never leaving her. She had come so far since he started giving her these challenging tasks. No longer the quiet, unsure employee, Cynthia now stood confidently before some of the most powerful people in the company, presenting her work with poise and clarity. When she finished, there was a brief silence. Then one of the board members spoke up. "Impressive work, Cynthia. Very thorough." The others nodded in agreement, and Cynthia allowed herself a small smile. She had done it. But as the meeting concluded, Joseph didn't smile. He didn't show his approval in the same way the board had. Later, after everyone had left, Joseph called Cynthia into his office. "You did well today," he said, his voice calm but serious. "But this is just the beginning. You're not ready yet. There's more work to do." Cynthia looked at him, unsure. "More?" she asked quietly. Joseph nodded. "I know you can do it, but I need more time to push you, to make sure you're ready for what's coming." Cynthia stood there, her heart racing. She had no idea what Joseph was preparing her for, but she trusted him. She had worked so hard for this moment. And now, it seemed there was something even bigger ahead. Joseph didn't reveal his plans yet. He didn't need to. He was confident that Cynthia was ready, even if she didn't know it yet. The work ahead would test her in ways she couldn't imagine, but Joseph knew she was capable. The real challenge was just beginning, and Frank Joseph was determined to help her face it. Months passed, and Joseph was now certain that Cynthia was ready for the big plan he had in mind. He had worked closely with the board, keeping them in the loop with his plans. The meeting they had just held that morning was the final step in making the decision. Joseph sat quietly in his office, his eyes fixed on the papers in front of him. He smiled to himself. He was excited, more excited than he had been in a long time. He whispered to himself, "This lady has barely enough to take care of herself, yet she remembers others. She gave when no one was watching. She's been giving without expecting anything in return. But I've taken it upon myself to make sure she'll never lack again. I'll make sure she's taken care of." Joseph's heart swelled with pride. He had watched Cynthia grow from a quiet, unsure woman to someone who now carried the future of the company. She deserved this, he thought. She deserved everything coming her way. He smiled again, knowing that soon her life would change forever. A few days later, it was a Friday morning when Cynthia was invited to the boardroom. She had no idea what was coming. The air was thick with anticipation as she walked through the door. Richard stood there waiting with the board members. They all greeted her warmly, but there was a serious look in their eyes. Cynthia took a seat, her heart racing with nerves. She couldn't help but wonder what this meeting was about. Was it more work? A new task? But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Joseph cleared his throat, his voice calm but powerful. Cynthia, he began, after months of careful observation and consideration, we are proud to announce that you have been chosen for a new role within Joseph & Company. You have been appointed as the new Chief Operating Officer, the COO of this company. As you know, the office of the Chief Operating Officer is the most important position after the CEO. You will oversee the daily operations, implement my vision, and ensure the company runs efficiently, making key decisions that will impact every part of our business. This is a huge responsibility, but we believe you are the one to lead us forward. Cynthia's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The COO position, that was a huge responsibility. A role she had never dreamed she would hold. The board members nodded, smiling as Cynthia continued to process the news. Along with this new position, Joseph added, we are providing you with a beautiful house and an official car. He paused, smiling. This is just the beginning of what you truly deserve, Cynthia. Your hard work, your kindness, and your dedication have earned you this. Tears welled up in Cynthia's eyes. She had worked so hard, but she had never expected this. She was just a girl from a humble family, trying to make ends meet. She had always dreamed of helping others, of feeding the less fortunate. But she had never imagined her kindness would open the door to a life like this. Cynthia stood there, overwhelmed. She could feel the weight of the moment, the enormity of the opportunity that had just been handed to her. She was grateful, more than words could express. But as she wiped away the tears, a new thought began to form in her mind. This was more than just a job. This was her chance to do so much more than just feed the hungry. She could change lives. She could help others on a much larger scale. Now, a plan was already growing in her mind. A plan to help even more people, to do more good in the world. She wasn't just going to take care of herself. She was going to take care of others, too. As she stood there, emotional and grateful, Cynthia knew that this new chapter in her life wasn't just a personal victory. It was a chance to change the world, and she was ready to make that difference. Cynthia had been in touch with her parents, sharing the news of her promotion and the remarkable changes in her life. When she told them she was now the Chief Operating Officer at Joseph & Company, her parents couldn't believe it at first. It was a role she had never imagined, one that came with power and responsibility beyond anything she had ever known. Her mother's voice on the phone was filled with pride. My dear, we are so proud of you, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. This is beyond what we could have hoped for. We always knew you had something special in you, her father added. None of us ever believed you'd go this far in life if not for God. He has truly blessed you. We'll come to the city soon to thank the man who helped you. You deserve all the blessings that come your way. Cynthia felt a lump in her throat as she listened to their words. She had always worked hard, but hearing their joy, their pride, made everything feel real. They had been so supportive of her, and now their prayers had been answered. She smiled, grateful for their love and prayers, knowing she owed so much of her strength to them. It had been 5 months since Cynthia took on her new role as Chief Operating Officer at Joseph & Company. Her life had completely transformed. She now lived in a beautiful house, the kind she had never even dreamed of. She drove her official car, a sleek vehicle that marked her new status. But despite all the changes, one thing had remained constant, her heart for the less fortunate. Cynthia had started something special, something she hadn't shared with anyone, not even Joseph. She had created an empowerment program for people with disabilities. She named it the Disability Empowerment Center. The center wasn't just a place for food or handouts, it was a place for learning and growth. Cynthia wanted to give them a chance to not only survive but to thrive. She hired skilled teachers to run programs that taught everything from sewing to carpentry, painting to computer skills. Her goal was to empower people with disabilities to become their own bosses, find meaningful work, and live better lives. The center became a beacon of hope, a place where people could dream again. But Cynthia didn't tell anyone about this. She didn't want praise or recognition. Not even Joseph, who had grown close to her, knew about her efforts. To her, this was not about publicity. It was about doing the right thing, helping those who needed it without asking for anything in return. She was content with her quiet impact, believing that her actions would speak for themselves. Joseph had noticed the change in her. He saw her more often at the office, working tirelessly, always thinking about the bigger picture for Joseph and company. But he had no idea about the other side of her, the one quietly working to change lives outside of the office. He admired Cynthia for her dedication to her work. But little did he know, she was building something that could change the world in ways he hadn't yet imagined. One afternoon, Joseph called Cynthia into his office. He looked at her thoughtfully, as if he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how to begin. "Cynthia," he started, his voice serious, "you've been doing incredible work here. I can see how much you've grown, how much you've taken on, but there's something different about you lately. You've been distant, almost like you're carrying a heavy secret. Is there something I should know?" Cynthia looked at him, her heart racing. She knew Joseph cared about her, but she wasn't ready to share her secret just yet. Instead, she smiled and shook her head gently. "No, sir," she replied softly. "Everything is fine. I'm just focused on making sure Joseph and company continue to grow. I'm doing my best." Joseph studied her for a moment, his gaze unwavering. "If you ever need help or if there's something you want to talk about, you know you can come to me, right?" Cynthia nodded, grateful for his support. But deep down, Joseph knew there was something more, something she hadn't shared with anyone, not even him. He didn't know what it was yet, but he was determined to find out. As the days passed, Frank Joseph couldn't ignore the change in himself. He had always respected Cynthia for her kindness, her hard work, and her quiet dedication. But lately, he felt something more, something he couldn't quite explain. Every time he was near her, his heart raced just a little faster. At first, he had been drawn to her because he saw someone who deserved kindness, someone who had been giving so much to others. But now it was different. Joseph found himself arriving at the office earlier than usual, just to catch a glimpse of Cynthia's face and that warm, kind smile. Each morning, as he walked past her office, he'd glance inside and greet her. "Good morning, Cynthia," he'd say, his voice softer than he intended. During lunch breaks, he'd find himself walking to her office for casual chats, even though there was no real need for it. He just wanted to spend a few more minutes with her. It didn't take long before the other employees began to notice. Whispers filled the halls. "Why is the boss always in Cynthia's office? Why does he go out of his way to check on her?" The tension was building, and Joseph couldn't ignore it any longer. He knew he was crossing a line, but every time he tried to stop, his heart told him to go back. There was something about Cynthia that went beyond respect. Joseph found himself wondering, what was it about her that made him feel this way? The gossip at Joseph and company only grew stronger. Employees started noticing the closeness between Joseph and Cynthia. Some were upset, questioning why Cynthia had been promoted so quickly to such an important role. They didn't understand why Joseph seemed so drawn to her, especially given how fast her rise had been. To them, it didn't make sense. Some whispered that Joseph was being unfair, giving her special treatment. Others were jealous of the attention she was receiving. They couldn't understand what made Cynthia so different. But for Cynthia, who was shy and not used to the spotlight, it was overwhelming. She had never sought attention. Yet now, it seemed to follow her everywhere. She didn't know how to deal with the whispers and the gossip. She just wanted to do her job and continue helping others, but now her every move was being watched. Among the murmurs was Joy, one of Cynthia's former superiors. Joy had worked at Joseph and Company for over 7 years, and the sudden promotion of someone like Cynthia, who had been with the company for just over a year, was something she couldn't accept. She hated the fact that someone so new had risen so quickly. While she had toiled for years without such recognition, Joy decided she would find a way to get rid of Cynthia. She wasn't going to let this go on. There had to be something about Cynthia that she could expose, something that would make Joseph see that he had made a mistake. So, Joy started watching Cynthia more closely, waiting for any mistake, anything she could use against her. Cynthia had no idea that she had made an enemy in Joy. But Joy was determined. She would find a way to bring Cynthia down, no matter what it took. And Joseph, who had no clue about the storm brewing in his office, was about to face consequences no one could predict. The next evening after work, Joy sat alone in her office. She sipped her tea, deep in thought. Her mind raced with ideas. What could she do to expose Cynthia? What could she find to end the favoritism Joseph had shown her? The jealousy in her heart grew stronger as she thought about how Cynthia had taken the role of chief operating officer, a position Joy had believed she deserved after years of hard work. Then, in the middle of her thoughts, a sudden idea struck her: hire a private investigator. She whispered to herself, I'll hire a private investigator to find something. Anything that could bring her down. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. After a brief exchange with an old friend, she quickly explained what she needed. Her friend understood and connected her with a private investigator who could help. Joy provided all the information she knew about Cynthia: the address, her routine, her schedule. She couldn't wait to see what secrets the investigator would uncover. The investigator wasted no time. He followed Cynthia every evening after work, keeping his distance, observing her every move. At first, he thought he might find something damaging, some weakness to expose. But after days of following her, he reported back to Joy with something unexpected. Cynthia wasn't living a double life or hiding anything dark. Instead, she was spending her evenings helping the disabled at a small center she had started. The center, called Disability Empowerment Center, was where Cynthia taught people with disabilities new skills that could give them a chance at a better life. The investigator's findings surprised Joy. There were no hidden secrets. Cynthia's actions seemed pure, too pure. The investigator called Joy one evening to give her the update. What do you mean she's helping people? Joy's voice was sharp with frustration. No, this isn't the report I was hoping for. This won't help my cause. She can't be a saint. There has to be something from her past. Dig deeper. She slammed the phone down, anger bubbling inside her. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had been sure Cynthia would have something to hide, but now it seemed that she was living a life with no shame. Joy couldn't accept that. She would not let Cynthia take the position she had worked so hard for. For 2 weeks, the investigator continued digging. He followed Cynthia, searching for anything that could give Joy the ammunition she needed. Finally, he returned with a new report. This time, he uncovered Cynthia's background. She had attended several schools, but nothing unusual. She was the only child of her parents, who had retired and moved back to the village. No big surprises there either. Joy felt a knot tighten in her chest. There was nothing in Cynthia's past that could be used against her. She came from a humble background, just like many others, yet managed to rise to the top. But Joy refused to give up. She had to find a way to bring Cynthia down. She paced back and forth in her office, the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her. What else could she do? What had she missed? Cynthia was too perfect, too clean. But Joy knew one thing for sure: this wasn't the end. There had to be more. She just had to find it. As the days passed, Joy grew more desperate. She knew she had to act fast before Cynthia's rise became unstoppable. But no matter how much she dug, no matter how much she searched, there was nothing. So, she decided to twist the information she had gotten so far. She would use it against Cynthia, one way or another. One evening after work, Cynthia drove her official car toward the exit gate of Joseph and Company. But as she approached the gate, something strange happened. A group of field reporters rushed toward her car, their cameras flashing and microphones shoved in her direction. Cynthia, is it true that you stole money from the company to start your charity center? One reporter asked sharply. How did you manage to keep this secret from Frank Joseph, your boss? Did he know about this center? Another reporter shouted, pushing the microphone closer. Are you using Joseph and company's funds for personal gain? A third reporter asked, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Cynthia froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had kept her charity work, the Disability Empowerment Center, a secret from everyone, especially Joseph. She hadn't told anyone, not even him, about her work with the disabled, the very people she had dedicated so much of her life to helping. Now, the reporters were making it seem like she had committed a crime. The scene at the exit gate quickly grew chaotic. Curious workers from the office gathered around, watching in silence. Some whispered to each other, unsure of what was happening, while others stood frozen, unsure if they should step forward or stay back. Even Joseph, Cynthia's boss, was watching from his office window. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene below. The reporters surrounding Cynthia's car continued their barrage of questions. He could hear what was being said, and the tension in the air was thick. What are they talking about? He whispered. Cynthia's mind raced, but she couldn't focus on the questions. The weight of the false accusations pressed down on her, and she felt herself starting to crack. She had worked so hard to keep her charity work private to avoid attention. Yet here it was, all spilling out in front of her colleagues. The rumors, the lies, they were too much. She sat there in the car, her hands shaking, her chest tightening. The reporters continued to shout questions, but she couldn't respond. It was as if everything around her had gone silent. She didn't know where to turn or who to trust. How had this happened? Who could have made up such a story about her? Tears began to fill her eyes, and she wiped them away quickly. But it was no use. The truth was being twisted, and Cynthia didn't know how to stop it. She had worked so hard to create something good, something that could help the disabled community, and now it was being dragged through the mud. As the reporters continued to push her with their questions, Cynthia finally opened the car door. She stepped out, shaking, her tears spilling freely now. The crowd of workers and reporters parted slightly, but no one moved to help her. The eyes of everyone were on her, judging, watching, waiting. Joseph, still watching from the window, felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He couldn't believe what was happening. He had never seen Cynthia so vulnerable, so lost. The thought that someone could twist her good intentions into such an ugly lie filled him with anger. He knew Cynthia, and he knew she was not capable of what they were accusing her of. But he also realized that this was no longer just about a rumor, it was about her future. Cynthia stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her voice barely a whisper as she said, "I didn't steal anything. I only wanted to help. Please, you have to believe me." The reporters fell silent for a moment, unsure how to respond to her tearful plea. The crowd around her watched, still unsure of what to make of the situation. And in that moment, Cynthia realized something. Her life was about to change in a way she never expected. Joseph, still watching from his office, made a decision. He couldn't let this go on any longer. He would find out who was behind the lies and protect Cynthia, no matter the cost. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning of something bigger, something that would change their lives forever. The next morning, Frank Joseph called for a board meeting. The room was tense as he stood in front of the board members, his mind heavy with what he had to do. The rumors surrounding Cynthia had already spread far beyond Joseph and company. The news had been picked up by the media, and her name was now tainted by false accusations. Joseph knew that Cynthia was innocent. He believed in her completely, but he also knew that things had gone too far for him to simply ignore it. He looked at Cynthia sitting quietly at the table, her eyes full of confusion and hurt. She had trusted him, and now here they were. Joseph's heart ached as he spoke the words he never thought he'd have to say. "Cynthia, effective immediately, I am issuing you an indefinite suspension," Joseph said, his voice steady but filled with regret. "This is to allow for a formal investigation to be carried out. We must follow the proper procedures to ensure transparency and integrity. While no conclusions have been made yet, it is important that the company and your reputation are thoroughly examined in light of the allegations." Cynthia's heart sank. She had worked so hard to prove herself. And now this. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The words suspension and investigation felt like a slap in the face. She looked at Joseph, trying to understand, but all she saw in his eyes was the weight of a decision that was tearing him apart. With tears starting to fill her eyes, Cynthia stood up, feeling the sting of betrayal deep inside. She didn't understand why Joseph was doing this. She had thought he believed in her. But now, the cold reality was that he had chosen to follow the rules, even if it meant hurting her. Without saying another word, Cynthia walked out of the boardroom. The suspension letter clutched in her hand, her mind was racing, but all she could feel was devastation. She had trusted Joseph, and now it felt like he was giving up on her just when she needed him the most. During the suspension period, Joseph called Cynthia a few times. He checked up on her, but each time he avoided talking about the suspension. The silence between them grew heavier. Joseph knew he needed to do more than just follow the rules. He needed to understand the whole story. He needed to see the truth for himself. One afternoon, Joseph made a decision. He went to the Disability Empowerment Center, the place Cynthia had kept hidden from him. He stood in the corner, watching as Cynthia spent her time with the disabled people she had dedicated herself to helping. She was teaching them, guiding them, giving them hope. It wasn't just a charity to her, it was her life. Joseph stood there, watching in silence. Tears filled his eyes as he saw the reality of Cynthia's work. He had known she was a kind person, but seeing it in action, seeing how much she gave without asking for anything in return, brought him to his knees. He couldn't understand how someone so pure, someone so selfless, could be accused of something so horrible. Joseph wiped the tears from his eyes, his heart torn. He had been wrong about one thing. Cynthia wasn't just a good employee. She was a good person, a person whose heart was full of love and kindness for everyone around her. She didn't deserve this. Leaving the center, Joseph made a vow. He would do whatever it took to fix this, to clear her name. He couldn't let the world see her as a criminal. She had done nothing wrong. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Joseph was determined. He had seen the truth. He had always known the truth. And now he would make sure the world saw it too. Cynthia's future and happiness would no longer be left to chance. He would fight for her, no matter the cost. It had been 3 long weeks since Cynthia Benjamin's suspension. The investigation was finally over, and the truth had come to light. The person who had conspired against her had been uncovered, and all the false accusations had been proven wrong. Frank Joseph, eager to clear her name and correct the narrative, went out to the media. He shared the full story, the truth behind Cynthia's charity work, and the incredible dedication she had shown to helping the disabled. He knew it was time to set the record straight. Cynthia, however, was still unaware of the changes. She had been left in the dark, waiting for the investigation to finish. But what she didn't know was that Joseph had already taken action to restore her reputation. That evening, Joseph invited Cynthia to a quiet restaurant. As she arrived, Joseph stood up from his seat and adjusted her chair, his gestures showing respect and care. They both sat down, and Joseph looked at her with a mixture of relief and regret. He knew this moment was important, a chance to fix the mistakes that had been made. Cynthia, Joseph began, his voice steady but full of emotion. I know you might have thought that I believed the accusations against you, but I didn't. The reason I had to do what I did was to make sure your reputation was protected. I wanted the truth to come out, not favoritism, not assumptions. The truth and transparency were necessary, especially with the news out there. Cynthia's eyes welled up as she listened, the weight of the past few weeks heavy on her chest. Joseph then reached across the table and handed her an envelope. Cynthia took it, her hands trembling slightly, unsure of what to expect. She opened the envelope slowly, her heart pounding. The first paper she pulled out was her reinstatement letter. It was official. She had been cleared, and she was being brought back into her role. Her heart swelled with relief. But there was more. She pulled out another document, and as she read it, tears began to fall. It was an official letter from the company thanking her for her tireless work in the community and pledging to donate a substantial amount of money every month to her Disability Empowerment Center. They wanted to help her expand the center and reach more people. Cynthia's tears flowed freely now as she read the words. She never expected this level of support. She had always worked quietly, believing that helping others was its own reward, but this was more than she could have dreamed. Looking up from the papers, Cynthia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much for believing in me." Joseph smiled softly, his eyes filled with warmth. "I've known about your charity work for a long time, Cynthia. That's why I promoted you. It was a way to give you the resources you needed to continue your good work. I didn't know you'd take it to such a level, but I'm glad you did." He paused, looking deeply into her eyes. "I didn't just promote you for the company, Cynthia. I wanted you to have more to take care of yourself, too. But what you've done with those resources, how you've used them to help others, has changed my view of life in ways I never imagined." Joseph took a deep breath, his heart beating faster. "All these months, I've watched you closely, and I've come to the conclusion that you must be an angel in human form. And this angel, if she would do me the honor, I'd like to be by her side for the rest of our lives." Cynthia's heart stopped for a moment. She had no idea where this was going. But Joseph wasn't finished. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a beautiful ring. "Cynthia, will you marry me?" he asked, his voice filled with hope and sincerity. Cynthia's breath caught in her throat. This was not what she had expected. But in that moment, surrounded by the love and support of Joseph, everything fell into place. She looked at the ring, then Joseph's face, and tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. She nodded, unable to speak, her heart full of love and gratitude. They embraced, both overwhelmed by the love and connection they had found in each other. It was a perfect evening, one they would both remember forever. As they left the restaurant, their hands intertwined, Cynthia's phone rang. She picked it up, wondering who it could be. A calm voice spoke on the other end. "Hello, is this Cynthia Benjamin? I'm the publicity secretary for the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. The president saw your story on national TV and would like to meet you in person." Cynthia's heart skipped a beat. She could barely believe what she was hearing. The president. She had never imagined something like this. All she had ever wanted was to help, to make a difference in the lives of those who had nothing. And now she was about to meet the president. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy and disbelief. Joseph stood beside her, proud of the woman she had become, proud of everything she had achieved. As they walked away from the restaurant, Cynthia realized that her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. She had started with nothing but a desire to help. And now she was about to meet the most powerful person in the country. Her journey wasn't over yet. It was just beginning. Cynthia arrived home that night, her heart still racing with excitement. The events of the evening, the proposal, the president's call, and everything that had happened, felt like a dream. She couldn't wait to share the news with her parents. She picked up her phone, dialed her mother's number, and waited as it rang. Her mother answered on the second ring, and Cynthia didn't even let her mother say much before she started speaking, her words coming out in a rush. "Mom, you won't believe what happened today," Cynthia said, her voice full of joy. "I'm reinstated. Joseph proposed to me, and the president wants to meet me. He saw my story on TV and wants to talk with me. Can you believe it?" Her mother gasped, unable to hide her excitement. No, let me hear it all." "I'll put the phone on speaker so your father can hear, too," she exclaimed as she quickly placed the phone on speaker. Cynthia could hear the soft sounds of her father in the background, eager to listen. And so her father's voice joined in from the other side. "What is this I'm hearing? You're telling me the president wants to meet you? And Joseph, the young CEO of your company, proposed? My goodness, child, tell us everything." Cynthia smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. She began telling her parents everything, from the false accusations to Joseph clearing her name to the proposal. She spoke of how Joseph had stood by her side, how he had believed in her when the world hadn't. As Cynthia finished sharing everything, her father's voice came through clearly, steady with pride. The scripture is right when it says, "Train up a child in the way she should go. Even when she is old, she will not depart from it." We, your parents, are proud of you, Cynthia. Though we're not surprised, we never imagined you could take your charity work to this level. I, your father, admire your strength. Cynthia felt the warmth of her father's words fill her heart. She had always looked up to them, and now hearing their pride and love for her, she couldn't hold back her emotions. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot to me," she whispered, wiping away a tear. Her mother's voice then cut through, filled with excitement. "My dear, when are you bringing the young man home? We've heard a lot about him, and we would love to meet him even before he comes with his people officially. We want to see the man who believes in you so much." Cynthia laughed softly, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Soon, Mom. Soon," she said, her voice full of joy and hope for the future. The phone call ended, but Cynthia stood there for a while, holding the phone in her hand. She couldn't believe how much her life had changed in such a short time. The love and support of her parents filled her with strength. She had come so far, and she knew that this was just the beginning. The next morning, Cynthia arrived at Joseph and Company, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the past few weeks. As she stepped out of her car, she noticed someone walking out of the building. It was Joy, her former colleague, and the look on her face was enough to tell Cynthia that something had changed. Joy had been sacked. She remembered Joseph mentioning the day before that Joy was behind the conspiracy, that she was the one behind the plot to tarnish her image. The weight of the situation pressed down on Cynthia, but there was little time to think about it. As Cynthia walked toward the building, she noticed two men in black suits standing outside near the main entrance. They were speaking quietly with Joseph. As Cynthia approached, she saw that the men were from the presidential villa. Their luxurious, customized vehicle, complete with diplomatic plates and added security features, made it clear they weren't just any ordinary visitors. They had come to take Cynthia to meet the president. Cynthia's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected anything like this. Joseph looked at her, his expression warm but serious. "They've been sent to take you to the president, Cynthia," he said. "It's time." The men in the suits opened the doors for her, and Cynthia climbed into the back of the sleek vehicle. Joseph followed in his own car, driving behind them as they made their way through the presidential villa. Cynthia sat quietly, her mind racing with questions. What could the president want with her? The past few weeks had been full of surprises, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. When they arrived at the presidential villa, Cynthia was escorted inside by the two men, with Joseph by her side. The atmosphere was quiet and serious, yet warm. The president was waiting for them in a large room, and as Cynthia stepped inside, she felt her heart race with both excitement and nervousness. The press was there with cameras, taking pictures and filming. "Welcome, Cynthia," the president said, his voice calm and welcoming. "I've been following your work. You've done incredible things for the disabled community, and I want to commend you for your dedication to helping others." The president stretched out his hand to shake Cynthia's, his smile warm and genuine. Cynthia felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had never imagined that her quiet efforts would bring her here to this moment. The president continued, "In recognition of your hard work and commitment, I'm awarding you a national honor. This is to encourage you to continue your humanitarian work and inspire others to follow your example." The president placed a sash with a medal around Cynthia's neck. Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. She had never expected this kind of recognition. Her heart swelled with pride and gratitude. But the president wasn't done yet. He looked at Cynthia with a serious expression and added, "But there is more. I am nominating you for the position of Minister of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. This nomination will be forwarded to the Senate for confirmation." Cynthia's mouth went dry. She stared at the president, trying to process his words. Minister. She couldn't believe it. The room erupted in applause. The press, Joseph, and the presidential aides all clapped and cheered in excitement. The president smiled and said, "You are no longer just an employee of Joseph and Company. You are now a minister of the Federal Republic. Your work has proven that you are more than capable of leading efforts to change lives on a much larger scale." Joseph stood beside her, his eyes proud. Cynthia couldn't believe what was happening. From a quiet employee at Joseph and Company to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, the transformation was beyond her wildest dreams. As Cynthia stood there, feeling overwhelmed by the honor, the weight of her new role began to settle in. This wasn't just about a position. This was a responsibility, one that would change lives across the country. Cynthia knew she had a long road ahead of her, but she was ready. The president had seen her potential. And now the world would see it, too. This was just the beginning. Cynthia was no longer just an ordinary woman helping others. She was now a leader, a symbol of hope for those in need. And her journey had only just begun. As Cynthia stood at the crossroads of her new life, she realized that no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Her journey from humble beginnings to becoming a beacon of hope for the disabled community is proof that when you give selflessly, the universe rewards you in ways you never imagined. The power of compassion, the importance of hard work, and the belief in doing good, these are the qualities that transformed her life and the lives of others. This story reminds us all that true success is not measured by the wealth or fame we gain, but by the impact we have on those around us. Cynthia's story shows that one person driven by kindness and a deep desire to make a difference can change the world. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Please share your comments below, and I look forward to reading them. There are more interesting stories coming up. So, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when the next story is uploaded. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me.